Good morning. Shit. We might hit a few triggers today. And again, we hit a few triggers every day. It's the whole point. I hit one of mine got hit this morning. Oh my goodness, did it. I think today, and I gotta go over to the thread, I want to talk about abuse. Abusive mentalities. The abuser. Force versus violence. Defense versus aggression. Good morning, Heaven. It was a good discussion that was growing on the thread yesterday. We were talking about abuse. And one of the sisters was sharing some of her, I believe her frustration or amazement at coming to, I think, the States and finding out how much domestic violence thrives. That, you know, we are a hotbed of abuse. Men beat up women like hotcakes, like it's just no thing. I used to be involved in domestic violence activism a while back when I would work with children's rights. So I don't have a lot of exposure, but I have a little exposure. But we're breeding a population of abusers. And it's not just men, right? There are women who are abusers, right? There is psychological abuse, there's physical abuse. That was actually one segment of the groups we worked with, which is dealing with men who were abused, men who, well, some of those men, you know, when you think about men being abused, you think about somebody that's weak, and that's not the story. That's not the truth. The truth is, the abuser is always the weak one. That is always the weak-minded one. That is always the one who's broken. It's always the one who's damaged. You got damaged women who abuse their men. And you have men who won't swing back and they won't defend themselves. But the vast majority of abuse, obviously, is men abusing women. You know, but so I was kind of thinking about that. I always like to explore and look at like, here's the question I was asking myself. I wasn't raised to stand around when somebody's being abused. That's not my family. That's not us. To my knowledge, there is no domestic abuse anywhere in a local family of mine. We don't raise men to stand around when women are being hurt. You know, the boys in our family, we're raised to be aggressive, though. I don't know. Don't let me confuse that, but we're raised like the lion. You always put yourself in harm's way for a woman. You always do. And all the men in my family do. Like, you know, there was one occasion where someone came in the family, they weren't aware of how they were supposed to act, where the hands were supposed to go. And the men got together and they explained to this gentleman, that's not how we get down. That is not how we do business. And I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do. I'm not saying that at all. You can do whatever you want in your family. I have to tell you though, we're not police callers. That is not who we are, and I'm not. And I don't know that I've raised mine to be, and y'all can judge me for it. I'm okay with that. But I'm an old head, and I believe in some of the old ways. No, I'm not much of a police caller. You got your hands on somebody. It's time that it's time that we certainly have a good little conversation. But I don't want to get too deep down that road. I was asking myself, why is it that I get aggressive and I get angry when I hear about a woman being abused? Right? It's because I was raised to be that way. I get angry. Like I think I might have posted 6 5, 7, 10 times. I don't know, in the last 20 minutes. Because I was thinking about it. And I was reading through the thread and the points she was making, and it was really, it was hitting my triggers because I was conditioned to, right? I was conditioned to be upset. I was conditioned to be a male lion in a pride where we always stand up for our women. When you don't hurt women folk, but it wasn't even that. It almost is, you're not allowed to hurt the weak, right? Because even if you're a bigger guy, you're not allowed to hurt a smaller guy. You know, you're not allowed, if there's 2 or 3 of you, you're not allowed to gang up on one. Like, you know, they used to call that jumping. Oh man, does that bring back memories? Oh man, I remember in high school, dang it, I got jumped by like 15 guys once. I remember that. That hurt. That didn't feel good at all. But it was crazy times. I got some of my friends here from high school. They might remember that. We had a little gang called the Bums Rush Crew, and they jumped in. That was no fun. But that's how we were. You know, we were boys. We were rough. We tumbled. But the question I asked myself, why do I get upset about domestic violence, but not so much about national violence, right? Like I get upset about one person being jumped by many, the strong hurting the weak just because the strong can. That's why the strong does it. But I don't get so upset when I think about war, right? I don't think about, let me change my background here. Because it goes with the perspective of the lion, because the lion always stands up for its women, right? You got this pride right here. You got 3 male lions. You're not coming in with 1, 2 lions to talk to these women. You're not coming in to kill no cubs. It's not going to happen. You know, now these brothers might be fat, might be a little sleepy, might be a little lazy, lay around, but abuse ain't happening, right? Because they know their role. Their role is precisely to defend their cubs and certainly make sure that the women who do all the hunting, that's another whole story. The fat lions, they sit back and let the women do all the hunting. That's another story. But the reality is they never sit around for abuse. They never sit around and tolerate it. You're not coming in their pride, abusing their women. It's not going to happen. And so a lot of things happen in my mind when I think about this analogy, right? Because terrorism, a lot of this terrorism, oh, we got to get the terrorists. In reality, a lot of terrorism is just the male lions and some of the female ones too, and the kids saying, no, you're not doing that. You're not coming to our country and abusing us, right? I live in a country where abuse has been normalized, and it's sick. It's sick. It's really sick though, because it's not just at the domestic level, right? Violence and abuse is normalized through this nationalism stuff. I hate the air quotes. Did I just do air quotes? Dang it, I hate that. I'm sorry. I was in corporate America. That's some of my training. Every now and then it slips out. I hate them damn air quotes. But, oh, I was going to change the picture. Let me change the picture. Abuse has been normalized. And I'm not just talking about, you know, domestic violence. Like, we are training people to look the other way, even for domestic violence to a degree, right? Because we have a large group of people who, you know, if you see someone getting beat on the street, you're supposed to just call the police and walk away. Or you're supposed to just call the police and watch. Or you call the police and you take out your little stupid cell phone and you film it, right? We've normalized the abuser. And like the vision I want to try to put in your head is the vision of that man and that wife beater, you know, who's beating up his wife, right? Beating up his neighbor, because that's what it is. You know, when you invade another nation, you're an abuser, right? The same things that happen in domestic violence, the rape, the death, the abuse of children, all of that happens in all these nations you invade. But of course, it's multiplied. I mean, it's multiplied on the scale of thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people get abused by abusers who don't use their fist or their hands. They use their pens and probably their intellect or their media. So we raise kids and we normalize abuse. And the thing that I'm kind of thinking, y'all tell me what you think, but I'm thinking that either you're an abuser or you're not. Right? Either you have this ability to hurt the weak or you don't. You have the ability, you got more muscles, you got closer access to a knife or you don't. You're taller, you're heavier, or you got a bigger population and more tanks. Abuse is abuse. I don't see any difference. But the thing that I'm challenging myself with right now, because I'm thinking, I don't get as angry when I think about an abusive politician or abusive leader, abusive nation, as angry as I get when I think about a spousal abuser. It's brainwashing. It's brainwashing. It's indoctrination. I've been indoctrinated to be okay when the person has a $3,000 suit and they do it with a pen and they're a congressman or a senator or a president. I'm brainwashed to think that that is normal. That sort of abuse, it's not abuse. It's bringing democracy and freedom. But it's still abuse. It's all abuse. It's always been abuse. You know what sent me down this avenue? I was watching outside the discussion on the thread about abuse. I was watching Iran. Right? Iran was, let me show you this. Iran was actually responding by making their own fighter. Right? So Iran has a fighter now. It's not in English. I can't speak that language. But they got their own fighter. And people can look at it, and you know, when I first looked at it, you know what went through my mind? I looked at it, I said, yeah, it looks like the F-5. That looks like the F-20. You know, and I'm going through my mind, yeah, it's probably not as advanced. It's probably, you know, it probably can't carry the same type of missiles. It's probably like a lot of the Russian jets that still got wires hanging around. It's probably, you know, not as evolved. You know, we still got better weapons. But you know what I saw in this analogy? And yeah, it looks a lot like the F-20. But you know what I saw in this analogy? I see a woman, I see a spouse who's tired of getting beat. I see a spouse who's constantly being threatened, who's taking a knife and putting a knife under her mattress because she knows her abusive husband's about to come in and beat her. She's being threatened. I don't see Iran as a nation trying to defend itself. When I look at this, I see it as someone who's tired of being abused. That's how I see it. I see a lot of the terrorism and a lot of the countries around the world, they're sick of their husband coming home, being upset. Their neighbor, who's supposed to be a collective in the human race together. We're supposed to be sharing a planet together. We're supposed to be evolving. We're supposed to be socially moving away from violence, not making it more prolific because we got bigger muscles or a bigger fist. I see something completely different, I think. And I think I really have to challenge myself. I have to challenge my own indoctrination, my brainwashing. Thank you, Courtney. Yes, dehumanizing. I have to challenge my own. I mean, I don't like war. I don't like to see things like that, but I don't get as angry. Like I don't. I've had on multiple occasions women who came to me for help in my past. When I was a younger strapping lad, I could still strap, not like I used to. And after I hear the stories about the abuse that these guys have done, I couldn't even stand and look them in the face. I mean, I know me too well. And, you know, looking at the battered eye and, you know, after a woman's been beat, I can't stand in your presence of a moy, a weak man, a moy. That's somebody said that yesterday, it's a moy. They don't call, and I forgot who sent it to me. But you got a mix between a boy and a man. And a mix between a boy and a man is a moy. He's not a man. He's still a boy, but he's damaged. And I'm not talking down to men who've done this or who did it. And if you used to do it and you don't do it any longer, we actually are cheering you. We are cheering you to keep moving forward with that evolution and moving out of that. You know, so it's not a talking down. It's just, but my indoctrination was never to deal with those situations, you know, without aggression, unfortunately. And this is where, to a degree, I have to focus on more non-violent solutions. But I could never stand in a guy's presence and I know that you were beating on your wife and just look at you. Like, I knew it would always go south. And the occasions when I knew I was going to be in a location that another guy was who did that, I'd have to not go or walk away. And I explained to that person, I don't want to put any names or anything in there, a lot of people on my friends list, that I can't go and I don't think you should go because I know me and I have a weakness. I have many weaknesses. And one of my weaknesses, I'm not a non-confrontation person. I actually am a confrontation person. Like if you look at me and you say, like people say stuff like, oh, you seem so patient. You know, you seem so non-aggressive. That's not me. What you see is who I've been forced to become because I know me when I get upset, and I get upset about this idea of women being abused. But I need to be more upset about nations being abused. I need to be less selective because everything that happens in abusive marriages happen in these abused nations. I think we're raising a culture of people who are normalizing abuse. And I think that's what the Pledge of Allegiances are for. I think that's what the flags and I think what all the nationalism is for, right? Because as bad as it might sound, how different is nationalism and an aggressive foreign policy from somebody who's okay with domestic violence? Same damn thing. Because an abuser is someone who's self-centered. He's got more interest in his own, in what he wants, than what's good for his family or good for that woman. He's okay with a foreign policy based on invasion and hurting somebody that's weaker, whether it's the wife or the children. And to get what he wants, whether it's warm chicken, or for you not to get nuclear weapons, or for you to do what he says, or for you to give them the right price on minerals, they're willing to hurt you. There's no difference. Well, no, there is a difference. There is a difference. The difference is somebody who beats up on his wife might go his lifetime, maybe beat 1, 2, 10, a dozen women. The nation that normalizes their leadership beating up on weaker nations can kill millions of people, abuse millions of children. You know, like the whole human trafficking problem we have in this world right now. Like, where does it come from? Like, would it even exist if we didn't have abusive nations, abusing nations that wear wife beaters and beat the hell out of anybody who's weaker, who doesn't do what they say? Would child trafficking even exist anymore? All this pedophilia and crazy stuff. We get so upset when we hear about the priest abusing kids, but we cheer and we clap and we vote and we support people, leaders, politicians who are abusing other nations. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but we've normalized violence. We've turned, like, nationalism, all it is domestic. It's a sense of self-pride and willing to hurt anybody to get what you want. How is that any different from domestic violence? Yes, Pat, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Domestic violence by nations. That's actually what this is. The earth is a home. This is our home. And we beat up on anybody who's small. Like, I'll go on record, I always say it. Damn it, I hope Iran gets nukes. Why do I want Iran to get nukes? Because a woman who can defend herself doesn't have to worry about an abusive husband. That's why. Look at North Korea. You're having all of these parties in North Korea. The families are getting back together, people they haven't seen in 10, 20, 30 years. Families that were totally disconnected are now getting back together. And why are they getting back together? Oh, it's because Trump took on the deep state. No, it wasn't. Because he was tough. No. It's because that brother got nukes. That's the only thing that happened. North Korea got nukes. The woman said, you know what? You ain't going to beat on me no more. But did Oprah Winfrey say in that movie, The Color Purple? Said, you know, I forgot her words, you know, but you ain't going to beat on me no more. It ain't going to happen. And that's what North Korea said. Y'all, listen, you coming home, you're not going to beat the hell out of me. I'm going to beat the hell out of you. And so now we have peace with North Korea. So no, I'm not upset with the idea Iran chat, because I think this is the psychology. This is the psychology that most people, I think, are locked in, where they're sitting here and they're agreeing, oh yeah, we just can't let Iran enrich uranium. We just can't let, pick up a knife. We got to get the knives out the house because we got to let the husband keep abusing them. No, we can't let them defend themselves. We have to keep up the rule of violence, not the rule of force, but we got to keep up the rule of violence. This is America's house. This is the UK's house. This is the France's earth. Belongs to them. When they come home, they get to tell the other nations how to act. This earth belongs to NATO. NATO is okay. It's okay when NATO beats up the kids and kills the kids and causes sex trafficking and destabilizes nations and calls them regime. It's perfectly okay. But then we're outraged when we think about a man beating up on his wife. We got real problems, y'all. We got real problems. And the more I think about it, I mean, it still always comes back to us. How can we frame that workshop for nations? Good question, Ish. Maybe somebody here is a lot smarter than I am can answer that question. I think, I can give a thought based on the lectures I've watched, but as much as I can, I stand back and say, y'all, we need to listen to the professionals, man. We don't, we listen, I think we can have ideas, but you got to put that in the neuroscientists and the behavioral scientists box, not the politicians and the fools, A lot of it begins with scarcity and poverty. That's why I always go back to that scarcity, right? Because that's what they talk about. When people grow up poor, they grow up desperate. When desperate things happen, they do desperate things, right? When a little boy grows up and he watches a boyfriend or his father or the male he looks up to beating up on his mom, he thinks that that's normal. It's normal. So when our kids grow up, they see this nation invading other nations. They see all the sex trafficking that comes out of it. They see the Moabs and all the new weapons getting developed. And this is a good thing. My God, yesterday we were talking about the United States now admitting that they're trying to change human beings and make them into mutant soldiers, right? This is just a man who's just lifting weights, trying to be stronger because he wants to beat up on his wife more. And I think we got to view it that way. I think we honestly got to view it that way. But what does that framework look like? So if I'm allowed to say anything, Ish, it would be the first step is you look in the mirror. That's the first step. And that's why, like I said, I was upset this morning. I was upset. I apologize if you're on your Facebook thread. Like, I can't see anything. This guy, what the hell is he talking about? Some violence in the nation, domestic. I get upset when I see some stuff like this. But the first step is the mirror. I'm looking at my own mirror, and I need to be upset with violence at the national level the same way I'm upset with violence at the domestic level. I need to step in the cut and put my body in the way between this abusive man and his wife. I need to put my body in the way between the abusive nation and the innocent one. Now, how do you do that? I don't know. Is that with votes? Some people believe in voting. Is that backing away from political parties? Is that speaking out? Is that, I don't think it's violence because I don't believe in violence. I believe in force. I believe you got to protect yourself, but I don't believe in violence, and a good example would be Syria wrapping up, right? So Syria is wrapping up. Assad is taking back his country. So, oh, well, Assad's a bad man. Well, now we can have a conversation about that, right? Because yes, Assad is a bad man. Assad is an evil man. Absolutely. And I believe in self-determination, but you can't take it by violence. And this is the problem with, unfortunately, the West, is that they think they can do everything with violence. They think that they had a bad day at work and they want their wife to do something. They can beat up on that nation. Those segments of Syria, yeah, they should be free. If they want to walk away from Assad, they should be allowed to. But it has to be a walk away, right? It can't be a force away. It can't be a revolution. What revolution actually ended up well for the people? None. None. Not one. Every time you have a violent revolution, that rule of violence, I don't know, psychologically it does something. And so we replace one king and lord and violent government for another one. Then it may not feel that way initially, like America. You might have a little freedom initially, but eventually that rule of force kicks right back in. I think that, segments of Syria should be able to walk away from Assad in Syria, just like Catalonia from Spain. just like Texas from America. I think that that's normal. Right? I think a wife should be able to get a divorce, you know, because it's not just abuse from nation to nation, but it's abuse from within the nation. Like, look at the prison system. My God, look at the prison system and what we do to poor kids in just the United States alone. That's right. I'm not saying what we do to criminals. I'm saying what we do to poor kids because they grow up in poverty. They turn to a life of crime for survival because they have to. It's what they're taught. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a whole village to screw up a child. It also takes a whole village to look the other way and be okay with the child being screwed up in these impoverished areas that we don't do a damn thing about, right? It's okay. And I don't think there's any difference. I don't think there's any difference between the guy beating his wife right here and the people who will just keep walking on the street and looking the other way. The people who just take a picture and walk away. So my answer to that is just, it's the mirror. It's the mirror. We can't have people who walk past a woman being raped in an alley anymore. Can't have those people. You got to start in your own mirror. You can't be okay with, you know, it's like, I think on 4 occasions, I actually let somebody who was being abused move into my home to get away from the abuser. Why? Oh, you're just a good person. No, I was raised to be that way. That's the default. That's what we're supposed to do. Oh, well, you're a good person. Am I? How about immigrants to your nation? You let an abusive woman move in because her husband's beating the hell out of her. Will you let people being abused in their nation move into your country? Will you? Think about that. I don't think we think about these things the right way. I see a lot of women who are against immigration. They're like, no, you can't come to our country. You can't come to our country. Stay in your country. Let whoever's abusing you and raping you there keep doing it. So Ish, I think the first thing is it's our mirrors. That's the first thing. Our first step is the mirror. Our first step is we have to put ourselves in other people's shoes. If we're not human beings, we're not getting anywhere. I don't think that the whole leader model of everything works. I think the leaders always end up corrupt anyway. I think at the core base human level, we have to be humans and we have to have a contract with each other that violence is not acceptable. Decisions based on violence and force aren't acceptable. I'll cheer this politician and maybe I like this politician, but when that politician says, okay, I'm gonna go home and beat my wife because I don't like what she said or did, I don't like the trade agreements, then you're supposed to walk away. Say, hell no, you're an abuser. You need to be an institution. You don't need to be in Congress. You don't need to be a prime minister. You need to be getting some help for that. I didn't know that's who you were, you know, because people don't do that. Whether that's with May or Merkel, Obama, Clinton, Bush, Trump, they support him to the end. They support the abuser because the abuser is my brother. And maybe, just maybe, the woman deserved it. You know, people who make decisions based in violence, those people have to go away. But the only way they go away is the non-psychopaths actually get it and act on it, right? So I think the beginnings of that, you know, type of workshop thing is if you're a violent person, you make decisions with your fist, with your pen, with your military industrial complex, you need to get some help. If that's you, if you know somebody like that, you need to tell them they need to get some help. You don't need to support them because they got blue on or purple or red or got a pen says Democrat, Republican, whatever. You need to back away from them. You know, but mostly at a national level workshop, we have to rely on the professionals. We have to rely on the people who handle abuse. We have to rely on the people who run and do the domestic violence shelters, and they do the research. They know the minds. And so, oh, and then it gets crazy then too, because you think about the mind of the person being abused. And after a while, abuse becomes normal for you. In fact, abuse is a way that you get love out of that person, right? Like, it's crazy psychological stuff. I'll let the psychologists answer that. But at a national level, you get people who become okay with being abused by legislation and law. You get people who are okay with having their rights taken. You get people, well, the government doesn't love me unless they abuse me. The government doesn't love me unless they put more of me in prison. The government does, and it just walks into this really crazy psychological space. And this is why professionals have to handle that. Right? This is why professionals have to deal with that. That's why we always got to push it back to them for the right solutions, things that are sustainable, that actually work in the long term, as opposed to us still continuing to be some sort of selective, abusive type of people. We raise our kids to say the pledge and be okay with abusing other nations, but somehow we think domestic violence is going to go away in a nation where we're okay with it when the leaders do it. We're okay when the leaders abuse a nation. Hell, a lot of people okay when the priests abuse the kids because it's a priest. You know, we have that weird psychological mind screw. I'm going to go down through the comments. But that's what got under my skin this morning. It kind of got under my skin a little bit. I was just raised to do that. Nobody's getting raped in front of me or beat in front of me without me. Somebody happened the other day. Somebody came to me. There was someone at my job, was out in the parking lot. Some guy was yelling at this lady. Actually, it wasn't a few days. She was like 3 years ago. There was some guy yelling at this woman in the parking lot. My first response, which probably wasn't the right thing to do. Probably wasn't the right thing to do, but that's just, unfortunately, it's just me. You know, first thing, I should probably call the police or something, you know. But I think, you know what, I think I told that lady, I said, why don't you call the police? Let me go out here and see what's going on. And I ran out there because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to stand up for each other. It's not even about me being a man. It's about being an adult. You know, two women can possibly deal with a grown man. Shoot, one woman could, one little girl could with the right training. You know, but we have to stand up for each other. So I think that probably is a part of a internal, national, earth level, human level workshop, is to work on yourself. You know, where are you trained to look away? And we got to stop looking away. We got to stop being selective about abuse. It's either violence is good or it isn't. You're an abuser or you're not. My mom was an equal opportunity abuser. She sure wasn't the weak one. Yeah, and that's what happened, Sharon. And that's why Iran is working on their military industrial complex. That's why they're making their jets now. That's why they're rushing to get their nukes now. We've normalized abuse and murder, and the whole world's going to do it. The whole world is going to protect themselves. That's what terrorism is. Equal opportunity. They just decide, I don't want to abuse anymore. I don't want to be abused anymore, so I got to abuse back to defend myself. And we're going the wrong way. I agree, especially emotional abuse. Exactly, Buddha. And that is a real form of abuse too. I am not belittling emotional abuse at all. Oh boy, sister, I can tell you, I done had some abusive, psychologically abusing women in my life. There are women who adapt, right? They adapt. They go ahead and do like Iran. They make the F-20. They make the F-5. It's like, you know what? I can't take them on with strength. So I know how to psychologically beat them down. And then they'll carry that forward the same way the man will carry the physical abuse into their next marriage because we don't fix anything. The woman will carry that psychological abuse to the next man. And I end up dating her. And next you know, 3 years down the road, I'm in the corner crying, listening to Bob Marley. You know, I've been there, done that. You know, because we run into it. We run into the psychological abuse. And then people say, well, what's worse? I don't even want to get into that. I think abuse is abuse is abuse is abuse. I think it depends on who you are. I think psychological abuse for some is worse because it can last a lifetime. And physical abuse for some is like, that heals, you dumb, you weak bastard, and she hit him back and she moved on with her life and forget about it. So I guess it depends on who you are too. We are brainwashed into dehumanizing people. Yes, absolutely. We're brainwashed into thinking Iranians aren't really humans. We're brainwashed into thinking women aren't really human. We're brainwashed into thinking it's okay to abuse them. They're just cattle, you know, which is why I'm saying we can't have this selective crap that goes on. I can't understand in a population of people who knows what happens in Saudi Arabia to women, that they are just house slaves and they can't drive cars. Not all of them, but a lot of them. How is it that any woman is in support of not even any woman or any man, any adult is in support of anything Saudi Arabia does? My God, they just beheaded, what was it, 48 people in 4 months? 48 people. And Is there a terrorist organization? Can you add up all the terrorist organizations that people are supposed to be scared of that have beheaded 48 people in 4 months? I was looking and I ran into a news report. Damn it, there was one of them. One of them was a kid. Going back. Like, this is normal and this is okay. You know, but we've dehumanized. Absolutely. Yes, Lori, I think that might have been you. I don't know who sent that to me. Moy. It's a Moy. There's a difference between a boy and a man. But when you got a mix, you got a little boy in a grown man's body, then it's a Moy. What do you have when you have a nation that's acting like a little abusive little bastard? A nation with mental illness, a Congress, a Senate, presidents and administrations that got the mental illness to beat up on the weak. What do you call them? I don't call them leaders. I can tell you that. I don't call them leaders. I mean, I do. I have people who run the country that I live in, but I don't call it because they're not leading me anywhere. They don't lead me. They're not my culture. I don't have an abusive culture. I have a culture of you always stand up for the weak, right? You listen, like the whole point of not having a violent revolution in Syria, you know, because America sent them all the damn weapons in the UK and France and the rest of these crazy psychopathic leaders, is because you want to hear the conversation. You know, you appreciate what's happening in Catalonia because you can listen to the people. And the people are like, yeah, we don't want to be a part of Italy. And it's their self-determinating right. They have the free will to not be attached to a governing body just because they were born there. They're a human being. They should be allowed to freely migrate. They don't want to live by the rules of that particular leadership, then they shouldn't have to. But you can only hear that if it's nonviolent. Right? Like in Yemen, you can't really hear that well. Like, we suspect that, yeah, they're just murdering the Yemeni people. It's just a total genocide and people want to get out. But you got the armed bands of people fighting, and maybe Iran's behind it. I don't know who's behind it. You know, but you can't hear the people explaining, well, this is what happened. You know, it's like a police responding to something. If the house is already blown up in violence, what can the police do? I tell you what my police going to do. They're just going to shoot the guy. Like, oh, what the hell happened? What happened? Okay, you know, not going to shoot him in his leg. They're just going to shoot him in his, you know, they're just going to kill him. You know, but if they're sitting on the sofa and they got some bruises and batters, the police walk in like, oh, damn it, what the hell happened? Oh, I don't want to be a part of Italy anymore. Italy is too abusive. Their taxes, their laws are just, I don't want to be a part of America anymore. They outlawed natural medicine and holistic, and the deep state done took over, and the military industrial complex. I want to live, I want to get a divorce. Oh, think about that analogy. You know, when you say people can't secede from their nation, it's just a divorce. People are tired of being abused. They want to live their own lives. They want to be free. They don't want their kids thrown in prison every 2 seconds because they did something that was peaceful that some psychopathic leader doesn't like. So we're saying that the woman, oh no, you can't get a divorce. You got to stay with the abuser. Think about the normalization of that. No, remember back before women could get divorces? They were slaves. Think about that. No, Catalonia, you can't leave Italy. Texas, Boston, you can't leave America. You can't, you know, the province in Syria, you can't leave Syria. You got to stay with your abuser. You were born, you got married to that person when you were born. You got to stay with that nation. Take the abuse because we're abusers and we're okay with it. We've normalized it. It's all right to throw millions of kids in prison. It's okay to throw millions of peaceful people in prison. It's okay to kill millions of citizens. It's okay because it's normal. Just tuning in, great topic. I think many people resort to aggression because it is the easiest emotion to express. It requires little or no control. Exactly, Nicole. You sound like a psychologist. You sound like you know what you're talking about. You know, it's easy. It's a default, right? I'm upset. What I'm going to do, I'm going to hit you in the head with a block. Why? Because I'm upset. I got a big fist, so I'm just going to hit something, right? It's like, what do they call it? The reptilian brain, the monkey brain. You know, we're supposed to be evolving away from this 98% monkey DNA into something greater. So you're right. It's an easy and a default solution. And I think people, Nicole, I think people have to look at their politicians that way. They got to look at their leader. I hate air quotes, damn it. I can't get this corporate America out of me. They have to look at their leaders in that way. Like, wait a minute, so we got a problem with this other nation and you want to go ahead and put on your wife beater and get a bottle of beer and get drunk and go beat them up? That's not a good idea. I don't think that's a good. I don't think that you're thinking this one through. We don't elect intelligent people who actually can solve problems, who don't resort to violence. They just resort to the default. Why? Because they got the muscle. They got the military industrial complex. They got the guns and the bombs. And so they go for the easiest answer. The hard answer is, oh, damn it. They're not doing what we want because they don't have, the women aren't empowered in that country. Women don't have the ability to get jobs. They can't have their own homes. So maybe what we need to do is help that country with abundance. Maybe we need to make sure that we 3D print homes so those women can leave the abusive men. Maybe they need a little security to make sure that they can be safe leaving those men. Maybe, I think that there are intelligent answers when you brainstorm and talk to the professionals, for these countries, that things happen that we want to go away, that aren't human, that are just monkey brain. It's not using another default monkey brain violent solution. Absolutely, totally agree. But we have to elect intelligent people who will never resort to violence, never under any circumstance. We don't know what to do about Iran right now, so we're going to table this. We're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep negotiating. We're going to keep brainstorming this. We're going to get all these neuroscience together and try to solve this and figure out what's really happening in the country. Why are they acting this way? And actually solve a problem. The same way we do marital counseling. Oh, people don't like counseling. Because it means you can't resort to that violent solution anymore. It means you got to actually explore the core of what's wrong with your heart or your country. It means you actually can come about a sustainable solution because you're thinking it through instead of just resorting to the default violence. Absolutely. Or she, Gerard, women abuse too. Yeah, they do abuse, Lori. I mentioned in the beginning that I used to be involved with domestic violence. So yeah, men get abused too, psychologically and physically. I met a guy and he could defend himself with his wife, but he was going through the process because he didn't want to. And she probably came from an abusive situation herself, where she grew up and she saw it and she thought that this was normal. And maybe it could be the reverse. It could be she watched her father beat up her mother and she was just like, you know what, that ain't never happened to me. I'm gonna beat you first. Which is why we got to have smart solutions, and we have to have national workshops and community workshops, things that resolve this. But all of these things are born in poverty, and that's why I keep leaning on scarcity. We got to make poverty go away. We know how. I had someone actually comment on one of my posts that capitalism isn't always pretty. Yeah, shaking my head. Yeah, Terry. Well, but you know what, Terry? The only thing I can think about when I think about that is when I used to be really libertarian, I used to really think about capitalism in a very positive way. I really never thought down to the core root of what's wrong with the human soul. Right? And because you're convinced, you're again brainwashed or indoctrinated to believe that these systems, but to me it's the same with socialism and communism, all of them. I'm not in any of those boats. We're brainwashed to believe that solutions that never worked will work. And that's what I ask people to think about. If you have an example of communism or capitalism or socialism, and I guess communism and socialism, but they're saying, oh, communism is a form of socialism, but it's never worked. None of them have worked. And if they did work in the past, they can't work in the future because we're going into a new era. They're all based on human labor and economies and money for human labor, and all of that's going away. All of that's going by the way of the automated world. So we need a whole new solution. And what did it for me, Terry, with capitalism was just money. It was money and cronyism. And that's how I kind of respond to people now when they talk about capitalism. It's just money and cronyism. The people who own all the money will make sure it's crony. They'll make sure that if you have socialism, it's cronyism, crony socialism. If it's capitalism, it's crony capitalism. You'll never have true socialism. You'll never have true communism. You'll never have true capitalism. It'll always be one group that has the most money and power screwing everybody else. And it'll always happen. That'll always happen. And the few times where it looked like maybe it wasn't going to happen, what country was that in South America? I don't know if it was Guatemala. or Brazil, I forgot who. Someone was moving towards that system, and America toppled their government. Like, hell no, you're not doing that on our continent. They're building a society where everybody gets, what they need. All the kids have food, water, and they're taken care of, and it's not survival of the fittest. Oh, hell no. Because if that system actually takes root somewhere, then that means their people will want it. And they don't want that. The cronies who run capitalism, they can't have that. But that feeds in, so could you link crony capitalism to domestic violence? Absolutely. 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 Scarcity and a lack of abundance comes out of that planned obsolescence and the artificial scarcity, which comes through crony capitalism. There's no question about that, and so cheering those things, you're actually cheering the abuse to continue. But I think people have to open their minds to start to accept that and swallow. It's a big pill. It's a horse pill for a lot of people. A lot of people been brainwashed their entire life to embrace these colonized models of governing. Let me see. The whole country is in an abusive relationship with their government. They keep abusing you, and you keep going to vote at the suggestion box for slaves. Stop supporting what is abusing you. Exactly, Kathy. I totally agree. Totally agree. You're spot on. It's an abusive relationship with government, and people continue the abuse because they get into that psychological reverse screw. It was a friend of mine who ran a domestic violence shelter in West Virginia taught me about that, where women, after a while, they were the abused. I gotta stop saying women and men, but the abused, after a while, embrace the abuse, and they need it and require it. And that's where people are, and they're convinced at some point in time that they deserve it. And once they deserve it, they'll ask for more of it. They'll expect it. They'll require it. It becomes normalized to them also. Yes, it's about respect for human life. Yes, D. Rich. And the basic bare bone respect for human life. If you encode that in a child, then a child will always know it's wrong when they see somebody else being beat up, when they see somebody, the weak, being abused. If you don't encode that in a child, they can grow up and be selective and say, oh no, it's 29 kids killed on a bus. Do I know them? Do they look like me? Are they in my family? Are they in my state? And the further they get away from that group, the less they give a damn. And it's scary and it sounds bad to say that, but it is what it is. It's true, but we have to deal with it. This is why I say we got to look at our ugly. We got to look at the ugly, because that's the only way we make sure the next generation, we're not infecting them with our ugly. That's the only way to make our ugly go away. And it's just called evolution. It's called social evolution. You look at your ugly, you critique your ugly, and you keep moving on, whether it's yourself, your government, your financial system, your economy, all of that. We have to evolve, but we got to look at the ugly. Let me see. A demoralized society, same as a demoralized victim being abused. Absolutely. Spot on, Sandra. Lori, love and peace, strength, gotta run. Okay, Lori, go get your cotton, girl. Let me move down in the comments. Psychological warfare is being waged upon the masses on many levels in many ways. It is, Sandra, because it works. Works. Like Sister said just a few comments up, it actually works. This psychological warfare thing is powerful. They've made people embrace these things. Right? They've made people who are lived in abusive marriages, they're okay with abusive government. They're okay with somebody else being abused because it's not them. We've created a really, really sick society because they use that Eddie Bernays, propaganda stuff against us. And this is why, Sandra, people need to be outraged. They need to be outraged. The idea that we had a president who passed the Propaganda Act, and the presidents who before him passed the other, it's okay to lie to your people and play psychological warfare on them, because that's actually what it is. I actually live in a country where I believe the government already declared war on its people. Not government in terms of necessarily politicians, but whoever runs them, whatever industries they get their money from that runs the political party, runs the whole system, they've declared war on the people. If that's Wall Street, some people say it's Zionism, some people, I don't know, Illuminati, but they've declared war on the citizens, and the citizens are still okay with it. Say, it's okay, nothing to see here, it's just normal, we're gonna keep walking. and they embrace it. This is a topic where knowledge is power. Yes, Jeannie, knowledge is total power. When people really understand like why people abuse, then we can actually think about a solution. We actually know who to get behind and who not to, right? When we know like the mind of abuser. And so this is what I did. I pushed the sister on that thread over to watching Dr. James Fallon. I always promote Dr. James Fallon because people need to see his research. He has a lot of lectures online. You don't have to be a geek about it like me and watch a whole bunch of it, but he's got 10 quick clips, where you can watch what is a psychopath? Where do they come from? What happens in the mind of a killer? Because the mind of a killer is the mind of a psychopath. And when you start to really look at that, then you start to have empathy. It totally is an information war. It completely, Alex Jones was right about that. He wasn't right about sex alien, multidimensional aliens. I don't think he's right about that. I don't think aliens are coming through a portal to rape people. But I think, but it's possible. I'd say it didn't happen. But he was right about it. It's an information war. When you really understand that poverty is the root of all violence and the seed of this, then you understand why you have white nationalists. You understand why you have black nationalists. You understand why you have Bloods and Crips and Triads and the KKK. It actually makes perfectly good sense. And then when you start to understand it, then you can step in a place where you need to be someone who's cheering solving the problems, not making the problems worse with more violence. The answer to poverty isn't more police. The answer to crime is not more police. Now, that might be the answer to violent crime. It might be a pharmaceutical side effect treating drug for the moment because you can't let violence run rampant on your street. But the politicians, they put nothing forward to resolve the poverty that keeps generating the kids. And as long as it keeps generating angry kids that live in scarcity, then violence will never go away. And that's why they don't do it, because industries make a lot of money on violent people. Somebody said it was profitable. It is. Violence is very profitable. Abuse is probably one of the biggest industries in the world. I mean, think about it. Military industrial complex and war and all the fights over oil and minerals, that's all based in violence. It's all based in force. It's probably the biggest business on the world is murdering people. 15th anniversary of Chicago police coming up this Saturday, just to remind us older folk what really happened when we try to voice ourselves. Yeah, brother Glenn, I have to go back and look at that. I'm thinking about that. You're talking about the Chicago riots. Yeah, okay, right, the police riots. But but Glenn, and that's a great one too, and that fits right in place because policing has become abusive, right? Policing has become another abuse structure. Now, mind you, which is why I don't blame police. You have to stop them. You got to stop what they're doing, but you stop that through the people who wrote the laws, because that's why they're there. Right? It's like the abuser in the house. You can keep just taking abusive men and putting them in prison, and what does that solve? It saves one woman, perhaps, if she doesn't go find another abusive man, which a lot of them do. So he goes into prison, he becomes more angry, and he comes out, and what does he do? He does it again. But meanwhile, he's raising kids, and what do his kids become? Abusers too. And so we're not solving anything. So you can get an abusive police, like the police officer who tased the 78-year-old grandmother. You can take him and throw him in prison, and what's that going to solve? Nothing. Why? Because the training still happened, the scarcity is still happening. The police who are scared of the population, they're still there. Why? Because the population hates the police. Why do they hate the police? Because the police are there to take their rights away and their free will. Nobody likes that. We all respond negatively. And so the police are scared. We get guns. We're scared. And then so the police they get itchy on the trigger finger. They get itchy on the taser finger. And this happens where you get a police to a point where he can tase a 78-year grandmother. Instead of focusing on the actual problem, we always go for the violent solution. Throw them in prison. Fire them from the police force instead of actually fixing the problem. We have tons of unconstitutional laws that are based in force and violence, right? That, to me, that's what all legislation is. When you write a law that says somebody can't do this, you take their right away. They can't smoke their cannabis. Their cannabis has nothing to do with you. Absolutely nothing at all. This whole war on drugs is a farce. Taking people to prison because they did something peaceful that had nothing damn to do with you is violence. That's not violence, it's legislation. They just wrote a pen. No, it isn't, because what happens if they don't do what that pen says? You send people with guns to their door to abuse them by putting them in a cage. That's called abuse. That is total abuse from government down to its people, you know. But we look at the abuser and we say, bad abuser. We don't talk to the neuroscientists. We don't think about the professionals who say, okay, well, that's great, you know, treat the side effect, but you got to cure the actual problem. We have tons of unconstitutional laws. When you take away people's rights, they become violent. That's just a default. It's going to happen with terrorism, with citizens, with anything. People want to be free. It's like I always go back to the Cat Williams tiger example. Tiger in a cage. Tiger in a cage, man. Let me get this abusive dude off from behind me. After a while, I won't see that no more. But you know, but this is what we do. The new fighter jets. What is that? It's just the deep state, America, military industrial complex flexing their muscles. Why? Because the woman's flexing her muscles. Iran is getting airplanes. She's starting to lift weights. She's taking black belt training. She doesn't want me to beat up on her anymore. So what am I going to go do? I'm going to go spend billions of dollars and make more muscle so that woman can't beat me, so I can beat up Iran. Same damn thing, but I don't want that behind me. I want the lines. Where are the lines? Here we go. Because it's just a default. We have to go back to being a default species, looking out for each other, protecting our weak, not abusing our weak. We got to stop cheering abusive men and women. We got to stop cheering abusive political parties. We got to stop cheering abuse in all forms. If you want violence to go away, we got to act like we want violence to go away. Trauma, let me see. Trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter what the experience was. The results will always be pretty much the same. Amen. Spot on, Nicole. You must be a psychologist. You throwing it out. Fight, freeze, and fawn is automatic response. Individual or collective, it's the same. Absolutely, absolutely, which is why we have to stop with the fight, and start with the think. No more fight. We need to start doing think. Or how about grow up? Can we do grow up? I think that would be a nice one. Instead of fight, we need to grow the hell up a little bit. Grow up. Let me see. A drunk man knocked. A drunk man knocked me out while I was on crutches from a torn Achilles tendon at a packed McDonald's on a strip in Las Vegas, and not one person helped me. Learned a valuable lesson that day about people. Well, Crystal, don't let that be about people. I don't think you learned a lesson about people, sis. I think you learned a lesson about brainwashed people. I think you learned a lesson about weak people. I think maybe you learned a lesson about people-ish, right? It's not a people thing to do. That's not what human beings have ever done. Human beings never just looked the other way and didn't give a damn. That's what weak people do. That's what sick human-like creatures do. That's like the moi, right? The boy in the man's shoes. That's somebody who's not human. You know, going back to the beginning of time, we always worked together. We always looked out for each other. We had to, because the world was trying to kill us. Every animal on this planet wanted to eat us, you know, but since we've killed all those animals for the most part, you know, we now turn on each other and people selectively look the other way. So it's about the mirror. It's definitely what Ish was saying. It's about fixing ourselves and going back to having pride and love in ourselves and understanding that we all are all cousins. All cousins. There's no strangers. There ain't nothing strange about anybody on this planet. With the strangeness is in your brain. Strange in the membrane. That's in your brain. The only stranger is in your head to think that these people aren't related to you, and it's okay to bomb them, murder them, invade them, or let this guy beat up on this woman on crutches, right? You know, so let me see. And yet, Gerard, people keep supporting the voting for these abusers. They do, Kathy, but that's why we talk about this stuff, right? That's why we talk about it. It's an information thing. We can't force them to think like us. All we can do is put information out there and let the power of thought hopefully start to sink in. You know, try to make analogies that might make sense and make people think about it. That, you know, if you're abusing women, it's no different than a nation abusing a country. You know, if you're cheering a nation to go to war and abuse a weaker nation. You're like the cousin who's cheering his brother for beating up his wife. Same damn thing. Abuse of the weak instead of an intelligent discussion and solving a problem. People are abused every day by marketing and selling carcinogens like processed meats, dairy products, resulting in cancer and death. Absolutely, Verna. Absolutely. And abuse breeds abuse, right? You know what I was looking at, Verna? I was looking at the ocean's dead zones. I didn't know this. I didn't know that there were large swaths of our oceans that are dead. They've become completely anaerobic because farmers stopped farming. They became chemical farmers and they stopped growing organically, and all these nitrates are washing off into the waters, and they're actually, like in the Gulf of Mexico was the example, and that you have large anaerobic areas in the ocean with devoid of oxygen where there are no fish and they don't even swim anymore. The abuse of people's bodies and systems, it all feeds together. And like people look at it like, you damn farmers, but the reality is it's still in the mirror, because who's buying the processed food that's making them grow only corn and soybean and to sell the corn syrup and processed food, because that's the base of it, or feed the animals from all the meat they eat and all the runoff. Why do we have dead zones in our ocean and this abuse of multiple layer society? The fight's at the grocery store. We don't make those links. People don't really make the links. They like to point the finger. You darn farmers, stop growing that way. If nobody was buying junk food, they wouldn't be growing that way. If people ate less meat, they wouldn't be feeding it. So, we have to come about just real smart solutions. And I think people have to think about it. But for the most part, we have to look in the mirror. People don't look in the mirror. We got to go back to focusing on us. That's how we solve problems. Government is slavery. Yes, Kathy, it is. And people love slavery, so they keep choosing it. Let me see. It's not affecting me. That's right, Nicole. They look the other way. It's not me that's being hit, so I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the abuse. I'm convinced we need to adopt the best standard of living for all, stop the money system, get rid of the governments and borders. People need to work together towards improving life and the planet, not for slave masters. Exactly, Kim Jackson, you were spot on with it. I posted a good talk. The Zeitgeist movement put out a good talk again this morning. They were talking about a transition. How do we move to a different system, a better culture? And from Peter Joseph, well, it wasn't Peter Joseph giving the talk, it was someone else. I posted on my page. I have to post it on this link when I'm done. Because we have to talk about moving forward, building a new model, fixing problems, not just throwing more violence in the face of violence. We got to get smarter. It's like, and that was my critique of the march in DC. Go down there and fight with the white nationalists. Give up on that nonsense. It shouldn't even be on news. You shouldn't be making it popular. What you should be doing while those guys are out there marching, it was like 7 of them in DC. What we really should be doing, we should be going to those poor communities that they come from and just giving them food. Talking to them, finding out what's wrong. Why is he so angry? Are they raising kids to be angry too and hate? That's how you solve hate. You solve hate with love. You don't solve force with more force. You don't solve violence with more violence. But mostly in DC, I'm not critiquing. There was a lot of love. They were singing and dancing, and the signs, for the most part, that I saw were very positive. But we can't forget that we got to take care of the communities where these people come from. People are more likely to believe the lies of those who oppress them. They are, Augustine. That's that Stockholm syndrome. They got it and they believe it and they stick with it. Take your kids traveling as much as possible. Yes, Courtney, that's absolutely a solution. When you expose your kids to more, they have less prejudices. The kids shouldn't be locked in ghettos and locked in trailer parks. We should be sending those kids and doing life swaps and letting them swap back and forth, get to know each other. So they don't grow up to be ignorant adults who hate rednecks or ignorant adults who hate people who live in the inner city. And they know that we're all just people. We lucked up when we were born in certain places. We became what we did. And we're just people. If you were born any other place, you would have been them. I think we've lost ancient rituals to deal with trauma, maybe. It's possible, Glenn. It's possible. That's why I look back. I think the ancient cultures, they knew more than we did. They dealt with these things longer than we did. You're talking cultures that are thousands of years old, and the colonizers came through and deleted all of it. They knew what they were doing when they burned the library of Alexandria. They burned the Mayan libraries. They burned the Aztec libraries. They did that for some good reasons. They don't want you being empowered you know, with all the solutions that were tried and tested over thousands of years. They wanted to give you an ignorant, colonized model that's based in force. And there's the discussion I was having with somebody yesterday. We were talking about it. It was just like, I'm not calling you a sellout. I'm not calling you a sellout. Actually, I was, but now I'm not. Because I think we all sell out. We have a sellout system. Our system requires we sell out just to survive. But I was saying, just kind of think about it like this, you know, and this was a person y'all call African American. And I was just saying, think about it like this, you know, think about the Liberia example. You know, what happened when all the slaves were free? A lot of slaves were free. They went back to Africa. They went back to Liberia. They proceeded to open slave plantations and enslave the Liberians on the same model they got from the plantation, because they were encoded to do that. They weren't in tap with perhaps what the Liberians still were in terms of spirituality. You know, we become what we hate, and we've got to get rid of all of that hate, all of these violent models that are given to us by this colonization, this idea that we can force other people with violence to be like us. This idea that it's a good idea to beat up on your wife. Same idea. Same idea. It's a good idea for a priest to abuse a child. All you're doing is the same psychological makeup, same mentality. You're abusing somebody that's weaker. The same idea that's got people thinking it's a good idea to go and abuse Iran and invade them. Same reason they abused Libya. The same reason they abuse Afghanistan and Iraq. Because they are abusers. It's what they do. Still domestic violence. All domestic violence. Anyway, good topic, you guys. I got to run. Love y'all to death. Y'all have a good day. Let's think about not supporting abusive mentality. It's time to grow up. It's time to get out and become something better. This is not us. Bye-bye.